Our next moderator is from either TVG or HRTV. I'm not going to get in the middle of that. But Greg Wolf has been, he started out doing broadcast on the UCLA station, being the play-by-play guy for the football team, and he's a sports broadcaster that does it all. He's been on Fox and most recently, not most recently, but I guess in 1999, he started as a television analyst and broadcasting horse races. He's still on Fox doing Major League Baseball stuff, and a very talented guy, nice fellow, Greg Wolf, ladies and gentlemen. You get the big brown chair, brother.
Oh, beautiful. Causing trouble out here, huh? Thanks for that nice introduction from Tom. Good to see everybody.
All right.
I am a student of the game. I actually got into the game. I really never followed horse racing. I had an audition. I knew I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. And it was spring of 1999. I had an audition to get my first full-time on-air job at TVG, which was just starting up at the time, the Horse Racing Network. And I did horrible on the audition, totally bombed it, but somehow they asked me to come back again, do it again. I did a little bit better, and they took a chance on me, and I got the gig. And I just had to immerse myself into horse racing and learn as much as I could, as fast as I could, be able to talk about it on air. That's kind of how I got into the game. We're going to talk with some owners here coming up, and you know, it's always one of the fun things for us is talking about all the different backgrounds that owners have in this game, and the path that they took to get into the sport. And I really didn't know a lot about it. I kind of figured it was kind of passed down from generation to generation. And for some people, that is how horse ownership is sustained and the industry kind of works. But you know, you've learned that there's different paths for all kinds of owners. For new prospective owners like some of yourselves out there, a lot of different ways to get in, and to get in slowly or to go all in, and we're going to talk about that with these different people coming up here in a moment. So they all come from differing backgrounds, so I'm excited to hear how they got into it, because one day I hope to be a horse owner myself, so I'm going to learn from them as well and try and pick their brains a little bit. So let's start with a former University of Virginia football player who has a keen sense for business. He moved to Kentucky and established with his wife Airdrie Stud Farm. They raised their family and their thoroughbreds in central Kentucky. He went on to become the governor of Kentucky from 1991 to 1995, while Airdrie grew into one of the country's top breeding operations. He's a founding member of the Kentucky Equine Education Project and received the Warner L. Jones Horseman of the Year Award for outstanding service to the thoroughbred industry. Please join me in welcoming Governor Brereton Jones.
Thank you. Thank you. Where do you want me?
See it. Our next panelist is the chairman of Bessemer Trust Company, a graduate of the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and the University of Maryland. He went on to hold several positions in the federal government. He was a legislative assistant to U.S. Senator Charles Mathias, special assistant to the U.S. Secretary of State, and later foreign policy assistant to U.S. Senator Howard Baker. He currently serves as vice chairman of the Jockey Club and chairman of the Jockeys Club Thoroughbred Safety Committee. He's a member of the executive committee of TOBA and chairman of Blood Horse Publications. Welcome, Stuart Janney III.
Where am I going?
Wherever you want.
See ya.
All right, and to complete our panel, join me in welcoming a native of Louisville, Kentucky, who found his initial calling in life to be that of a college football player. We got a couple of college football players out here. The governor used to play as well. Then an educator and then a hedge fund manager before retiring to concentrate on thoroughbred ownership and racing. He and his wife Lori founded Starlight Stables back in 2000. He was the recipient of the 2013 Warner L. Jones Horseman of the Year Award, which is bestowed upon a member of the horse industry who displays an unequivocated spirit and passion for the sport. He orchestrated the launch of and serves as the board president of the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance. Please join me in welcoming Jack Wolf. Wherever you like.
Thank you.
And we were supposed to have a fourth member out here. Unfortunately, Maggie Moss could not make it out, who's been in the game for a long, long time and had a lot of success, but because of weather conditions, she was unable to make it. So Maggie, we miss you. All right, so thanks everyone for being here today. Obviously, very different backgrounds for all of you, how you kind of got into this game. Why don't we start with sharing kind of your path and how you got into this game and why you chose the route to success that you did. And I guess, Governor, we can start with you.
Well, I can honestly say that the very first thought that I ever had of getting involved in the horse industry came when I was somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 or 6 years old. As you know, a lot of people, when they come up to meet the child of a friend, will pat them on the head and ask them, what are they going to be when they grow up? And I'll never forget the first time I got that question, and I looked up and said, I'm going to raise horses in Kentucky. And where did that boy get that crazy idea? And I was in West Virginia at the time. I had nothing to do with Kentucky. Nobody in my family was from Kentucky. Nobody from my family was in the horse business. I did grow up on a farm. It was a cattle farm, though, but I always had a pony to ride and always focused on the equine fun that all kids have growing up on a farm. And so that to me was something that was very significant. And as I went through my college days, I just kept in the back of my mind that was what I really wanted to do when I finished with the University of Virginia. And that's precisely what I decided to do, and to do so not as a professional to start with. I really was starting just to have a few thoroughbreds, but one thing led to another, and it ended up being in the business with the very purpose of raising thoroughbred horses for sale, because it's pretty expensive if you keep a lot of horses. You need to be able to have the opportunity to cash out sometimes, not to get out of the business, but to be able to take advantage of a situation if you happen to have a good horse. And so one thing led to another, and I love it. I promise you there's nobody in this room that loves the business any more than I do, and I intend to be there until death do us part.
Yeah, I guess we should distinguish, too, the differences of how everyone got in it. So the Governor breeds primarily to race and sell. Stuart, I guess we can talk about your experience next and your sole ownership and limited partnerships.
Well, I got into it because it was something that my parents did. I grew up on a farm in Maryland. My father was a lawyer, but I think, a passion of his was raising steeplechase horses, riding them, and that was a part of daily life. My mother's family had always been in the flat racing side of things. I did grow up around it. I saw how much they enjoyed it. I then pursued a number of other things that didn't include horse racing, but I got to a stage where my parents got elderly, and I began to help them more and more with what they were doing. And then when they passed away, I took over their stable and have never looked back and have never regretted it.
And it was something that, it was a decision for you, certainly, but you've gotten more and more into it, and you're someone who really is very hands-on, right? You're out there in the mornings and watching workouts and things like that?
Well, I like every part of it. I think you you have a tremendous advantage if you love horses. If the horse is just something that crosses the finish line and that's what you enjoy about it, just the win, I think that's really only half the sport. I think it's enjoying being out in the morning, seeing them work, and it's also the people that are in the industry. I mean, there's a huge diversity of people, from hot walkers to exercise riders to jockeys to other owners, and even the trainer is a lot of fun to be around. So I think it's, you know, something that just, it's a gift that keeps on giving.
Everyone up here, too, has won at the highest level. And for a lot of people who might be considering horse ownership, Jack has kind of set a great motto. You've had a lot of success early on, and you've done it with racing syndicates and public partnerships. Tell us how you got into it.
Well, actually, my wife and I started on our own back in 2000 and got lucky enough in our first crop to buy Harlan's Holiday. So as governor knows, that took us a long way. So after being in it for about 3 years, I got schooled pretty well on the costs and the overhead and so on, so I decided to take on partners. And the first two partners we got involved with, we had Shadow and Purge, so that was a pretty good start. And then about 3 years later, meeting Donnie and Barb Lucarelli, we partnered up on 50-50 on the horses, and then it just grew into where it is now.
Shadow, by the way, 2-time Eclipse Award winner and just inducted into the Racing Hall of Fame.
Right.
So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
It's not supposed to happen this fast for someone. And I mean, almost right off the bat, you mentioned Harlan's Holiday. It's a horse who won the premier event here, the Toyota Bluegrass Stakes. But in a way, did it make it more difficult for you at first because people expect kind of that same success that you established so early on?
I think what all four of us would agree, you've got to be lucky. And on top of having, you know, top-class people, I've had the good fortune of having two very good bloodstock agents, good people surrounding me, you know, the trainers, the people that break the horses. So if you got a good team and have a little bit of luck, hopefully good things come.
Let's talk about your individual perspectives from all the different years that you've had in this game. How does a new owner decide, because you all have different goals that you want to get to in this game and how you go about it. So how do they decide on the approach that a new owner is going to take, what goes into that decision? Stuart, let's start with you and your insights as they relate to sole proprietorship and limited partnership.
Well, I think first of all, there were clips that were shown at the very beginning of this program, and I was out there as opposed to back there when they were shown, and I thought that pretty much everything that was said in one way or another was good advice. One of the reasons that I took over my parents' stable some 30 years ago, even though it might not have been a convenient time for me to do it from the perspective of other things I was doing, was that they'd assembled a wonderful team of people that I had huge confidence in. And those people have pretty much been the basis of what's gone on ever since. Now, people get older and new people replace them, but there's a culture there that has never changed. So I think, you know, the most important thing, regardless of what business plan you pursue in this business, is to be really comfortable with the people you've associated with. And I think, looking at it from the other perspective, the mistake that often gets made is to go too far, too fast with the first team that you've put on the field. And so getting into partnerships or starting slowly and building as you see success is probably an important element of being in the game for a long time. I think too many people do spend a lot of money and expect a lot of success very quickly, and Jack is an example of when that did occur, but there are lots of times when it doesn't occur. Not that you spent a lot of money back then, but that you had success early on. And when it doesn't occur and you've got a lot of horses there and they're all needing to be fed and medicated and people need to be paid, it's a little bit of an unhappy experience when you're also changing out the people that are advising you. So, you know, going slow and having a real plan that you stick to, I think, is very important.
Governor, what about your experience?
Well, my experience was a little different in that I started in an area where there were no thoroughbreds, and people were not focused on the thoroughbred industry. And so as I realized, as I'd said earlier, how excited I was to think about the opportunity of owning my own thoroughbred and being involved, that I went ahead and decided that the only way I could really afford to do it was to do it sort of one horse at a time. And I had, after I'd finished the university, I'd started a construction company, and fortunately the construction company had done reasonably well. And so I was just kind of step by step adding a horse, and then knowing full well that it was extremely expensive, even with just a few horses, and consequently what I needed to do was to become more commercially involved, so that I could make a horse that I had that ran well available to other people for purchase, and that through that purchasing process, I was able to keep the economics of the industry in a reasonable, manageable position, and one step just sort of led to the other, and then like so many people that get into the business, if you are paying attention to it, and if you are committed to finding the right people, and it's like any other business, though. I mean, anybody who gets in a business and doesn't focus on bringing the right people in to be employed by that business is asking for problems to exist. I mean, there's no question about that. And so that's just kind of what I had done step by step, and I was quite fortunate that I was able then to come up with some horses that were very marketable. And as we would go to the sales, I mean, at the very beginning, nobody knew who this funny-looking guy Jones was from West Virginia. I mean, we just kind of came in and went step by step, and it's been so unbelievably exciting. I can't tell you how much excitement there is. I mean, I've been blessed by so many things in my life, and why I really don't know. But God has blessed all of us in so many ways, and so to be able to experience it and then go on and be successful in it is a really special thing. And all I can say is I've been blessed, and I can't give you a better reason for my success than that.
Is there something that maybe when you got into this that it excites you more, you got more pleasure out of, that you might have never thought of would have been the case?
Absolutely. I had a filly that I was going to take to the sale. I actually did take to the sale, and she was quite small, and she was very slack in her pasterns. So here, I'd already entered her in the sale, and as I was getting ready to take the group to the sale, I thought, I'm not going to get a bid on this filly. I mean, she's not going to be sold well. But there's something about her that's special. I've watched her in the field. I've watched her go with the other horses, and so I didn't take her to the sale, and I put her in training, and there's a trainer by the name of Larry Jones, and Larry Jones was somebody that I did not know, but I knew a lot about him from some other people. And Larry had said he would love to train a horse for me someday. And consequently, I thought, well, this is a good opportunity, so I sent Proud Spell to Larry Jones. Well, the very first race that the filly ran, she went 56 and some change to win a maiden special weight. And then people came running wanting to buy her. And again, because I was breeding commercially, I felt an obligation to sell her. But when the people would come to look at her, because she was down in the pasterns and she was small, they would all find a reason to turn her down. And so she just kept winning, and then finally we moved up into the Grade 1 stakes, and she not only did that, but she became the champion 3-year-old filly in America. And so how does that happen? Your thoughts on that issue in no way should be limited by your thoughts about horses. I mean, that's the thought about what really goes on in life, and that's the way it happened with me. And I know how lucky I was, and hopefully the luck will continue.
Jack, what about your story? And you actually kind of changed your business model a little bit too over the last few years, right?
I have. You're asking what a new owner should be.
How'd you decide to take your approach first?
Well, it was, like I said earlier, my wife and I started out buying our own stock. And, you know, we had some success early on, but as we went along, we got to learn the business a bit. And it's very capital intensive, as we know, and you have the overhead. And it's a very risky thing buying yearlings, which is what we do. So it was at that time that I reached out to a couple other people I knew and asked if they want to, you know, get in the partnership business. And then how it grew to where it is now is when the Lucarellis and Lori and I hooked up, and then Mike Masters down in Atlanta, Georgia, is an old friend of mine, a hedge fund manager. And so the three families got together, and we were just splitting the horses up in thirds. And then as we continued on, there was continued interest. And it's really nice to have the partners that we have. We got about 10 partners in Starlight and 6 or 7 in the Star Ladies, which won the other day at Keeneland here for the first time. And I got to go in the winner's circle. Thank you, dear.
Always a good thing at Keeneland.
Right. So that's just how it got to where we are now. As far as, I think the earlier question you asked, what the people should do, I agree with Stuart. Couldn't agree with him more. That take your time. Interview all the people that you can on, the trainers, the bloodstock agents, partnerships. Look at the different partnerships that are out there, how they're organized. Hopefully, you have a partnership where the principals have their own capital at risk, and then go for it. If you've got enough time and capital, you want to do it on yourself, do the same thing.
I would add one thing to what Jack says. The one thing that people in our business have a difficult time doing is saying something bad about somebody else. So when you ask questions, I think it's more important to listen to what people don't say than it is necessarily to listen to what they do say. I get asked a lot, well, what about this trainer? What about that? Well, I first of all don't necessarily know everything I would want to know before saying something quite negative about somebody. But this is a small business and we all need to get along. And so I find hopefully creative ways to maybe give the impression that somebody that I care about that's interested in this sport should possibly look in a different direction. And I think a lot of people do that. So listen carefully to what people are saying by not saying it.
And with, too, it all depends on someone's goals, right? So, with you, you had a Kentucky Derby winner, of course, but you've been very patient with your horses, and you'd always said, we're not going to go to races like that with a Triple Crown unless the horse says he's going to take us there, and it worked out for you. But some people, they do want to get there, so it all depends in choosing a trainer as well, right, that what your goals are.
Absolutely. Trainers are different, and what they're trying to accomplish, lots of cases, is very different. And so, you know, what you are trying to accomplish needs to match up with them. Otherwise, it just isn't going to work. And quite frankly, for what I do and what my cousin Denny Phipps and his family do, and we all really pretty much do it together, so I can talk as one on this, is try to raise good horses and get them to the races with the very best chance that on whatever day it is, it doesn't need to be their 2-year-old year or their 3-year-old year or their 4-year-old year, that at some point they're going to be the best horse they can possibly be. And because we're not really buying horses at the sale, we're somewhat limited in how many horses they're going to be. It really comes down to how many mares there are. And so it's very important that the horses have a fairly long career at the racetrack. And it's also very important that when we have fillies, that they can become the best that they can possibly be, because that ends up allowing us to send those horses back to be brood mares and then perpetuating the same thing that we're trying to do in the first instance. I mean, Shug McGay, who trains for us, has trained the horses he has in the barn. By and large, he's trained their grandmothers, their mothers, and now he's training them. And in lots of cases, it includes great-grandmothers.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, that must give you even more satisfaction.
Well, it does. Orb was like that. But it's also an advantage in some ways, because you see how strong genetics is. And you will see the granddaughter of whatever mare you had way back when, and she'll do exactly the same things in the barn that the mother and the grandmother did. There's one particular family that I share with my cousin, and they appear to be very precocious. And so there's a huge amount of excitement sometime in their 2-year-old year. But mentally, they don't quite get there in their 2-year-old year. And so without exception, they get one start in their 2-year-old year. There are long faces all around, and everybody says the same thing every time. Well, she's just like her mother. And she'll be back in her 3- or 4-year-old year as a much, much better horse. So, you know, that is the nature of this game and the breeding part of it.
Yeah, they pass on those traits. Let's move on to this next part of the discussion that sort of goes back to goals and what everyone kind of wants out of this business when you get into it. And it's different for everyone in terms of success. It obviously means different things to different people. So why don't we share what you define, each of you, as success in racing, and maybe talk us through one of your greatest racing successes. And Jack, we can start with you. You have the syndicates and the public partnerships, and talk us through one of your great successes.
Well, I think
Shanghai Bobby obviously was one of them, right?
Yeah, we can talk about Shanghai Bobby, but I think all of us share the same thing. We want to, you know, either breed or buy it to sales, potential graded stake horses, and you know, hopefully have them become broodmare prospects or stallion prospects. And so, obviously, Shanghai Bobby, you know, ticked all those boxes. We bought him here at Keeneland for $105,000 as a yearling. He won the Hopeful, the Champagne Stakes, and then the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. And and of course, got the Breeders' Cup, or the Eclipse Award for the best 2-year-old. So I mean, it was a fantastic experience.
Time for the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Trevor Denman standing by.
Let's watch it now. Shut up.
Away they go. They all came out well.
he breaks out here. I remember Todd called an audible right at the end and told Rosie to go to this. Speed was holding that day, and we normally would rate off the lead, but Todd told her to go ahead and go, which you'll see here in a minute. At the head of the stretch, we're all gasping for air, including the horse. But
just so everyone knows too, we're keeping an eye on which horse there.
The blue and gold, the 4-horse on the outside second. Title Contender was supposed to be a good horse. And I want to say they're probably going in 22 and 44, something like that, Donnie, which you would suspect would take its toll. Yeah, 45 and 2 in the half mile. Where's Durkin when we need him?
We should get him to call another race out here.
So we come to the head of stretch, and as you'll see here in a minute, Trevor says Shanghai Bobby's exhausted. We've got a picture at home of 3 sequences, the pictures at the head of the stretch of the owners in the stands. We're all like, oh man, we're doomed. Right here, listen to Trevor.
Starting to pick them off. He's in a mix of horses, but Cap over Stoney going to hook to the outside. Homeward bound Shanghai Bobby's exhausted.
He's exhausted. So now we're all losers. And then he re-breaks at the 16th hole, and then you got Optimism, and then he fights off the gray horse to win the thing, and we're all going crazy. It's, yes. You know obviously the 3 things that the 3 of us share also are fantastic trainers, and I can't say enough about Todd and his staff. And we've been with him now 14 years, I guess, and that's another thing. You folks getting into the business or thinking about it, and Stuart already alluded to it. Get with a trainer that you can work with, or get with some partners that you enjoy being with. But that was a huge experience for all of us.
Undefeated champion, that horse, in his 2-year-old campaign wins the Eclipse Award, and of course the Breeders' Cup. Did you set specific goals for yourself when you got into this of races you wanted to win, or races you wanted to try and be in, or types of horses that you wanted, or do you just say, I want to have fun and hopefully survive?
I don't. Donnie, how about you? We just try to get the horses that compete at that level, and we've been fortunate enough to have like 5 or 6 horses in the Derby, but that's not what we're looking for in the spring. We're just looking for a horse or horses that can compete at that graded stakes level. And so to answer your question, not really.
You already talked about a pretty good filly you had. Talk to us about success with another good one you had.
We've had 2 really strong fillies for us, obviously. And the second one that you're making reference to is a filly called Believe You Can. And I must admit, I love the name on that filly because I grew up in a very positive household, whereas I remember my father when I was a very young age, said, now, you never use the word can't in this family. If I tell you to do something, you find a way to do it, because I'm never going to tell you to do something that you are unable to do. So if you're able to do it and it needs to be done, whatever it may be. And at first I thought, oh yeah, that's I've heard all that rubbish before. But the truth of the matter is, it's not rubbish. And once I began to really understand what was making him tick, it helped with me as well. And so believe you can, and you can. That was and here she comes in the Kentucky Oaks, which of course is the equivalent, I think, to the male winning the Derby. And she is being ridden by Rosie Napravnik, who is a great female jockey, and it seemed only fitting to have a female rider win the #1 female race. And I think we're second right now. Yes, there we are.
Racing in 5th. Amy Dean is in 6th. Eden's Moon racing in 7th. Summer Applause is in 8th through a 23-second flat opening quarter mile. Carlovy Barry is racing in 9th. On the outside, Jemima's Pearl is
the
in
9
10th.
horse. You were 13 to 1 in this race too.
That's right. We were 13 to 1, and that normally would spell defeat. But the horses don't really understand that.
Broadway's Alibi and John Velasquez still have the lead. Over in second, Believe You Can. On the inside, On Fire Baby and Joe Johnson in third. Grace Hall tries to follow her
Rosie
through.
made both highlight
Moon is
films.
the first one to check out. Drops right back through the field. Grace Hall is having to go wide to try and challenge. Followed through by Amy's Deanie out wide. On the inside, Summer Applause as the Oaks field come down the lane. Broadway's Alibi taken on the outside now by
Because
Believe
she
You
won't
Can.
quit. She's
Believe
got
You
that
Can, and Oaks
tenacity.
in front. Broadway's Alibi is really digging into the inside and coming back for more. Back in third is Grace Hall. Just over half a furlong to go in the Oaks. Believe You Can surges to a lead of a length and racing towards the line. Believe You Can wins the Oaks for Rosina Pravnik. Believe You Can took the Oaks.
Thank you. There's really no way for me to adequately describe the feeling that you get from that sort of an action. And everybody did their best. I mean, a wonderful trainer in Larry Jones. And there's Larry holding up the trophy, and a wonderful jockey, and it just all came together. And we're looking to do it again sometime, somehow, some way.
And yeah, I mean, you were involved start to finish, right, in terms of
Yes.
with this filly.
Yes. That filly was, of course, being commercial breeders. She went to the sale. We felt that she was a very good filly, and we put a reserve on the filly of $75,000, and she didn't bring that, and we bought her back, and some people came up to us afterwards wanting to buy her, and we believe that when you go through the sale and give everyone the opportunity, that's the fairness with which you market your horse, and if they come and ask, what is the reserve, we will tell them what the reserve is. We don't go out trying to broadcast it, but if it's important enough to them, a lot of people have enough confidence in their own judgment that they're not concerned with what the breeder or the owner thinks the horse is worth. They're more concerned with either hiring their own people to make those judgment calls, or being capable of making those judgment calls themselves. And consequently, when they came back to want to buy her, thank goodness we had that philosophy, because we didn't sell her, and she's now worth a little bit more than that.
I would think so. So yeah, as we said, everyone up here is won at the highest level here at Kentucky Oaks winner, and Jack, you've had a Kentucky Derby favorite, got a champion 2-year-old, and Stuart had a pretty good one who won the big one for you.
Exactly. Orb has been a huge thrill, and I hope he will continue to be a wonderful part of our lives as a stallion, and racing, and looking forward to racing his offspring.
How did it start out, too? So, of course, Orb, Kentucky Derby winner, his racing career didn't begin all that great. Did you know what you had early on?
Well, I wasn't told that I needed to come over to Saratoga to watch his first race. We thought he'd have a nice race and, go from there and learn from it. He did a few things that suggested he needed to learn a lot. When he was in the starting gate, I've seen horses rear up. I've seen them go to their knees. I've never seen one jump straight in the air, absolutely straight. And needless to say, that suggests you're going to end up way back by the time the horses are actually on their way. And I remember watching the race on television and saying to my wife, well, that's that. And the next thing, you know, obviously wasn't in the screen. And then I hear the announcer saying, and now here comes Orb, he's circling the whole field. Well, he didn't circle the entire field, but he came pretty close to it and he finished second. So of course, next time he runs, he's the 1 or 2 to 5 favorite. And Paul LaDuca said, you know, this is just crazy. You don't make a maiden like this a 2 to 5 favorite. Well, he was correct. Because Orb had taken the lesson of the first race, which suggested to him that he needed to go through the gate on his way out and not wait for the others. and he did, he finished, but he finished, I think, punch drunk. And he was ridden on both occasions by Joel Rosario, but I remember talking to Shug, my trainer, afterwards, and he said, well, you know, I think we can explain this rather dull effort because Johnny Velasquez just came back and passed me in the, you know, unsaddling area and said, you're not going to believe how hard that horse hit his head. So we have an excuse. Well, he spent a huge amount of time refining his gait skills after that, and he didn't run again for quite some time. He gets down to Florida and surprised us at how well he did when he did run down there. He'd broken his maiden up here at the end of the, not here, but at New York at the end of the year, which was fine. But when he got down there on what we thought was a speed-favoring track against good horses, he ran a lot better than we thought. So there wasn't another opportunity for him in allowance company. They kind of push you into stakes at that time of year. And he went in the Fountain of Youth, and I'd previously signed up to go to New Zealand, and I can remember beating on the people in the hotel to somehow get the Wi-Fi working well enough to see the race. And I was frankly much more excited about a horse called Data Link that was running in the Canadian turf and was the big favorite that day, and then Orb was going to run the Fountain of Youth the next race. And so when Data Link managed to win that first race, I said to the group, well, you know, we got another one in this other race, and if he can go out and just, you know, have a good experience, maybe run 3rd or 4th or something, and then maybe he can go on a little bit later when the distances get bigger and the track isn't quite as speed favoring. And lo and behold, he wins the Fountain of Youth. And I turned to Lynn and said, you know, I think our life is going to change here, and whatever you got scheduled for the spring is going to have to accommodate Orb. and needless to say, he ran great in the Florida Derby, got to the Kentucky Derby, was made the favorite, and ran a terrific race. And it is a thrilling experience.
And we do get to see it. Here it is.
Now, you know, with these other horses you've been seeing, you see them a lot in the beginning of the race, and you can actually tell what colors they have. With Orb here, you can hardly tell what his colors are, and you're not going to see him up in the front.
Jack is on the far outside. In behind them comes Longshot Giant Finish, Frack Daddy Extreme outside. That will take charge. Normandy Invasion rides the rail as they begin that wild scurry into that first turn. And then
what was your experience too leading up to going to the Kentucky, the week of that Kentucky Derby?
I worked at Bessemer and flew down here on Saturday at lunchtime into Lexington and had, because I didn't want to, like Maggie Moss, have a problem with planes. But I didn't want to be here because I get nervous. So we all got here and had lunch in Lexington, and we got to the track around 3:30. That was plenty of time.
And Kevin Krieger has Golden Sense off the pace today. He's 5th as they move for the far turn. The Normandy Invasion, followed by It's My Lucky Day. Down toward the inside is Charming Kitten. After that comes Giant Finish. Nothing yet from Orb. He's still about 15th, but he begins to move up on the far outside. Palace Malice is the leader. He's set a torrid pace so far, and the pack is catching up quickly. Through on the inside is Oxbow, and Normandy Invasion is storming home. and they're into the stretch, and Normandy Invasion has taken the lead on the outside. Orb is coming with giant strides in the center of the track. And here comes Orb on the outside now to take the lead as they come down to the 16th pole. It is Orb in front from Normandy Invasion, My Loot, and Golden Soul between horses down to the wire. Orb has won the Kentucky Derby for Shug McGee. It was Golden Soul. Revolutionary came late on the inside, and then it was Normandy Invasion, and it was Orb today in the Derby. His final time was 2 minutes 2.
And that
0.89 seconds.
Wound up actually being, I mean, a lot of times you see horses that go in the Kentucky Derby don't go on to do a lot of great things. That was a very deep crop of 3-year-olds that year.
It was. And, you know, they're not going to show the winner's circle, and, which I never get tired of looking at. But in that winner's circle were a huge number of Phippses, few less Janneys, and a lot of McGaheys. And that's really what it all is about. I mean, it was a wonderful experience for those 3 families.
Let's talk now. We have about 16 minutes or left. We have some obviously prospective owners out in the audience. If you were advising a new owner on getting into the game, what steps that you would recommend from each of you, and maybe lessons that you've learned on your individual paths that can keep them from making maybe some of those same mistakes or missteps. So Governor Jones, as an owner who breeds to race and sell, what piece of advice would you have to offer up?
I think the focus on the people who prepare the horses to run is the most important, because and I use that terminology to mean not just how they are trained once they become of training age, but how the breeding of the mare with the stallion. I mean, which one gets bred to whom, and then going from that point on through the process of how they're trained to run, and that goes right back to the earlier conversation that we had. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, we've said that, but it really deserves to be repeated, because it really needs to be quality. And I would say one other thing too, and this maybe is, some people will say, I wish he hadn't mentioned that, but there's a problem right now in our industry. There are people that are training horses that are doing things that they ought not to be doing. And you say, well, who? Well, I'm not here to give you the who, but I'm here to tell you that we all need to be cognizant of the quality of people with whom we associate in the horse business, because giving horses medications that are illegal destroy the horse, destroy the owner. There's a lot of destruction that can and does take place, and we've got to sort through all of that right now, and that's in the process of being done. I'm absolutely positive that this industry will survive, but if we don't change the way we're focusing on many of those kinds of problems, it will not survive. But I'm totally convinced that it will, and it will happen. And we need people such as yourselves to go to the people. You know who the people are that are really doing business in an honorable way, and so it's, if you combine that honorableness, that fairness, that ability to make the right things happen, with a hardworking person. Those are the kind of people you want to associate yourself with.
Stuart, you've been a big proponent too of eliminating race day medications and helping the sport more than just, you know,
well, I
doing
think
what you do in it as well.
Governor Jones said it well, and so I'll just associate myself with what he said. I will follow up a little bit on what he said about how important it is to have the right people at every stage. The idea that a horse can be ill-trained or ill-brought up and arrive at a trainer's stable, and the trainer can then make something wonderful out of that horse is not really what's going to happen. It can happen, but you have defeated yourself for the most part. So from my point of view, having the very best attention from the moment they're foaled to when they arrive at the trainer's doorstep is just as important as what that trainer does. And getting those elements right is what I try to spend a little bit of time on, and having communication between all those elements for me is very, very important. Thing I would say beyond that, which maybe hasn't been touched on and which is something that guides me, is, you know, somebody will come up to me and say, well, how many mares do you have? Or how many horses do you have? And I say, well, I don't know, somewhere around 100. And they kind of go, whoa. And I said, well, think about it. If you've got 20 brood mares or 22 brood mares, whatever it is, you've got foals, you've got weanlings, I mean, you've got yearlings, you've got horses of racing age that are actually there, about 15 to 20 of them at the racetrack maybe. You've got ones that are injured and coming back from that. So, you know, at the end of the day, there are a lot of horses. And so particularly when you've had a little bit of success, somebody says, well, why don't you get more? Well, there's a reason. There are two reasons why I don't get more. One is that I try to take a worst case scenario, that all these horses that I'm sending to the racetrack are not winning anything like what I expect them to win. And how many years am I going to be happy doing that? Because the second part of it is that I never want to be in a position where I'm selling a good horse, a good mare, to make up for what didn't happen at the racetrack. I always want to look at my broodmare band and say, what are the ones that are not doing what I would like that maybe somebody else would like to own? But that's never going to be, you know, a major revenue item, because obviously people are clever and they understand that maybe this mare is not meant for success. But I never want to, and I never have, taken one of the ones that I consider to be, you know, the future and put her in the ring. But that's just me. So I take a very hard look at cash flow and say, where would I be 3 years from now if Orb hadn't been around, or Datalink, or whoever it is that carries the ball for you. So I think some people get over their skis, and then they find that they really need to sell their better horses, and that really doesn't work.
Jack?
We need to sell ours.
No, everybody has a different plan. Yeah.
We've got a different program, and we hopefully can sell a broodmare prospect or a stallion prospect after his 3 or 4 year old career. But like you say, I mean, we've all got to figure a way to, you know, pay the overhead, and the overhead's a big thing with these horses. And, you know, we buy at the yearling sales, but we do pay attention to who the breeders are and the consigners. We obviously take the breaking process very seriously, and the trainers and the riders. So if you're looking to get in the business, I would say get with somebody that has access to those, you know, particular areas. But the overhead thing, and I think you're going to touch on it, is something that you know, it's huge.
Why don't we do that? Because we want to save some time for some questions too. So we'll get into exactly that, kind of the nuts and bolts. from all the fees that are associated with owning a horse: insurance, legal, accounting, training bills, all of that. It's not just you buy a horse and then that's it. There's a lot of upkeep, obviously. So we could start with you. For those considering ownership, what do you each month generally kind of looking at with a horse?
Well, once we buy the yearlings, like this year we bought 13 yearlings in the Starlight and 5 in the Star Ladies. Once we purchase the horses, then we go through a billing process of the estimated overhead between the end of September and the end of the year, and then we bill twice through the following year, and that usually takes care of it. I mean, if you're looking for an average cost per horse, we can throw out a number like 60 or 65,000. I don't know. What would you think, Stuart? Is that
Well, I'm not the great expert because I don't buy them, but I
Yeah.
mean, you're talking about
overhead?
overhead,
Once they're
yeah.
at the track.
Maybe for me a little bit less than that, but yeah.
Well, different trainers have
Right.
different costs.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, was there any unexpected things that kind of came up that when you got into this, you didn't realize that you were going to have to be paying for?
Well, everything's subject to change in this business. And once you think you've got it all figured out, I mean, if something else happens, it's you know, I'm sure Governor Jones even can say the same thing at this point. You could go out there tomorrow and see something he hadn't seen, but you know, Donnie does a good job of estimating the cost. Of course, you have surgeries that will add to the you know, additional costs, but it's pretty predictable, or it has been in our case.
What about in your experiences, Governor?
Exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You and I agree, Governor.
I'll ask this, and then we'll open it up for questions. Why? I mean, you've been in this game a long time. Why do you continue to stay in horse racing? Is it just the love? Do you have to love this game to be in it?
It's absolutely the most fun you can have if you like action, and I've always liked action. The fly likes action too. Excuse me.
You're going to give him some action when he sits down.
Yes, and consequently, I, as I said earlier at the beginning, I mean, I'm going to be here as long as I've got the life to live to do it. I will be in the horse business, and I love it with a passion, and there's so many good people in it, so many wonderful people in it. Like any business, there are also some that aren't so wonderful, and some of those are the cheaters, and some of those are the people. I mean, I hate to keep talking about that, but it's gotten to the point that if we don't admit that we've got a problem that we need to fix, we're not going to get it fixed. And I'm here to tell the world we've got a problem, but that we're going to fix it. That is significant, I think, for this industry.
And would you say that's part of being a responsible owner as well as?
Oh, I do. I've always felt that you know, owners do have a responsibility on several fronts. You know, the care their horses get, what their lives look like after they run, and, you know, very much whether they've promoted a level playing field. And owners don't get a pass on that just because they've entrusted the horse to a trainer.
I mean, obviously won a Kentucky Derby. That is the pinnacle. So is there something next for you that keeps you in it?
Well, yeah, I mean, what's that old expression? Nobody ever died with a promising 2-year-old in the barn. I mean, so, you know, hopefully it keeps me alive. But tomorrow, you know, I'll spend a fair amount of time looking at foals. There's Orb's full brother out there. You know, he'll obviously be all shiny, and I'll be very excited about that. But there are a lot of others. So, you know, hope springs eternal. if you start with just loving being around a horse, as I said earlier, you basically have, you're almost there. And then if you start to see some success in what you're doing, it's just a lot of fun, and it brings your family together, and it couldn't be a better experience on so many counts.
Jack, same for you, just the love of it that keeps you in it?
I would say pretty much what these guys are saying, the horse, the action, in our case, and similar to your family, the partners, like I said, we've got about 10 partners or families. That's the fun thing. We've won 19 grade ones, and I can't wait to win number 20.
All right, we got some time for questions here. And I know Alyssa and Mike and Simon are out there with the microphones, so they'll get over to you in a second here so we can open it up.
Hi, yes. We got one that came in that we're going to open it up a little bit here too. Is it cheaper or as expensive to keep a claiming horse in training versus a stakes caliber horse?
Well, it's more expensive in the sense that you win that prize money, and there are people that are entitled to some of it, like the jockey and the trainer. So, when you think about expenses, you think about what is going to happen if the year rolls out and nothing good occurs, such as stakes wins and other things. But then you have these variable costs, like what I've just mentioned. Also, you may start insuring things for a lot more money than you would otherwise. So there are variable costs that are associated with doing well, but that's just fine.
All right, sir.
Hi, I'm Dean Reeves, thoroughbred owner, and I remember in an interview that Mr. Phipps said we love our fillies. And if you were going to add a broodmare to your band, what priorities do you give in that selection process? Is it pedigree, race record, and what do you go through in that selection?
Well, I know there's a great debate as to whether it should be about the race record, about the pedigree, or what the mare looks like. And obviously, you try to get all three, but getting all three gets increasingly expensive. I haven't bought a mare for a while, but I do buy a couple of reasonably well-bred fillies each year, so that I'm getting, hopefully, new blood into the broodmare group. And so it is some combination, but I wouldn't want to tell you that it's one versus the other. And I know there are lots of studies and statistics about whether it is one or the other, but some combination, and it's very subjective with me, and I think it's probably fairly subjective with my cousin, too.
Let me come down to the front. Sir, your name?
Yes. Bob Hutchison. How important is it now, with certain states being friendlier to horse racing than other states, that if a person's starting into the business, not buying Kentucky Derby winners, that you pay attention to the state program, the sires programs, the breeders programs when purchasing primarily a yearling?
I think it is important. Those things can give you a fair amount of help. And I did a lot in Maryland, won 4 or 5 Maryland Millions, and loved the program in Maryland. Unfortunately, Maryland went into a decline for a considerable period of time and got out of Maryland pretty much. We've now got a training center at Fair Hill, Maryland, and plan, I think, on participating a lot more in Maryland racing, though my broodmares are in Kentucky, so that's not changing because the stallions are by and large here. But I think these programs are very important. The New York bred program is a very, very good program, and so I think it can help you a lot, particularly when you're getting in.
I agree. We don't really pay that much attention when we are actually showing the horses. Can you all hear me? Yeah. If it so happens that we buy a New York bred, we had a West Virginia bred on our start list this year, and so we try to find the athlete with a decent pedigree And if it happens to be a New York bred or Louisiana bred, which we bought before, so be it.
Yes, ma'am.
Deborah Thorson. I have a question for Mr. Wolf. I missed the amount of overhead costs. It didn't come clear, and I was trying to write it down.
Okay.
And what period of time, when you spoke about from the time they're 2 to the time they're already
I think if you're
racing,
just,
or
if you're just looking for a number,
or annual?
yeah, if you're just looking for a number, use as a benchmark, I'd say 60 to 65,000 for a year. And Stuart, his costs are less than that.
Time for one more, maybe.
Front.
Hello, it's Sheila from Lady Sheila Stable. I have a question for Mr. Janney. If one wanted to start with one filly that she doesn't want to let go and start a broodmare, I mean, with, I guess, a broodmare facility, how do you go about that? If you have predominantly racehorses that are racing and cull them out and then suddenly get very attached to one who has been pretty incredible and are thinking about maybe breeding her, how would you do that?
Well, as I understood the question, you have a horse that you know has really had some success on the racetrack, and you really want to now breed her and make sure you have the right decisions made, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's, I mean, first of all, there are a lot of statistical services that help you do that, but I think you really need to have good advice. And it's very hard to get all that together, but it's well worth doing. In other words, you ought to talk to somebody that is at the sales all the time, that's buying, that whatever, so that you get a sense of what stallions they like, you know, so that you have that subjective judgment. And then you need to talk to people that are always just looking on the breeding side of things. To me, it's drawing those different elements together. So, you know, when I try to figure out where my mares are going to be bred, it's a combination of things. It's talking to the trainer as to, you know, what he's liked about certain things in the past, and particularly what he doesn't like. I mean, it may be that it's suggested that you go to this stallion, but if your trainer is going to tell you that he doesn't want to see that stallion's offspring in the barn, that's not very useful. So to me, it's kind of getting a good cross-section of opinion, and then obviously picking a stallion that suits the price range. You don't want to overbreed or underbreed. So, you know, you need one price-wise that suits your wallet and suits the mare.
I think we went over a little bit, but if you did not get a question that you wanted to ask, all these guys are going to be around during the length of the conference, so you can come up to them individually and ask your questions to them over the next couple of days. Thanks, Jack, Stuart, Governor Jones, for your insights.
Thank you.